The luxury car's engine purred quietly as it pulled up outside the modest corner diner. A woman in her early 40s, dressed in a tailored navy coat and black heels that clicked against the pavement like a metronome, stepped out and adjusted her sunglasses. Her name was Evelyn Hartwell, one of the most powerful women in the city. CEO of a billion-dollar real estate firm. Unreachable, unshakable, and known for her cold logic and ruthless efficiency. But that morning, something had shifted. A strange intuition pulled her there, to Marley's Diner, a place she hadn't stepped foot in for over 20 years. She stepped inside. The bell above the door jingled softly. The smell of bacon and pancakes hung in the air. Waitresses in green aprons scurried between booths, refilling coffee, taking orders. Evelyn paused near the entrance, glancing around. Her assistant had begged her to reschedule. "Why this place, ma'am? There's a board meeting at 10. But Evelyn had silenced him. She didn't know why she had to come. She just knew she did. Then she saw them. In the back booth, next to the fogged-up window, sat a young girl with a white cane propped against the wall. Maybe 8 or 9. She had milky, unfocused eyes and wore a hand-me-down coat too thin for the cold. Her plate was half full. A waitress knelt beside her, feeding her gently, whispering softly. The girl smiled after every bite. Evelyn squinted. The waitress looked familiar. Then it hit her. No, it couldn't be. She blinked, then looked again. The woman was older now, maybe 35. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her uniform was faded and patched at the elbow. But the eyes, those tired, kind eyes, were unmistakable. Lena, the girl who'd once lived 2 doors down from Evelyn in the tiny foster home they shared as kids. The same Lena who always snuck extra food under Evelyn's bed when she went hungry. The same Lena who took beatings for things she didn't do just so Evelyn wouldn't have to. Evelyn swallowed. Her mouth had gone dry. The blind girl whispered something. Lena laughed, a genuine, warm sound, and wiped the girl's mouth gently with a napkin. Evelyn found herself standing in front of their table before she even realized she'd moved. Lena turned, startled. Their eyes locked. For a moment, silence. "Evelyn," Lena said slowly, uncertain. Evelyn nodded. Her voice caught in her throat. "It's been a long time." Lena stood abruptly, embarrassed by the coffee stain on her apron. "Oh God, sorry. You caught me off guard." Evelyn looked at the girl. "She's beautiful. Your daughter." Lena hesitated. "Not biologically." Evelyn's brow furrowed. Before she could ask more, the girl turned her head toward her and said, "Who are you?" Lena gently touched her shoulder. "Sweetheart, this is an old friend." "Hi," the girl smiled. "I'm Rose." The name struck Evelyn like a memory. A buried moment from years ago. "If I ever have a daughter, I'll name her Rose," Lena had said once, staring at the stars from the rooftop of the group home. "Because no matter how many thorns life gives me, I'll find beauty." Evelyn sat down slowly, her expensive coat bunching awkwardly in the booth. "She can't see me," Evelyn whispered. "No," Lena replied, "but she sees better than most people." "I had no idea you were here working here." Lena nodded quietly, her hands fidgeting. "Yeah, been a waitress most of my life. After the system, not many doors open. But this place, it gave me something steady." Evelyn stared at her, unable to reconcile the girl she remembered with the woman she saw now. "You took her in? Just like that?" Lena's smile faded slightly. She was abandoned at the hospital. No one wanted a blind baby. She kept getting passed around the system. When I met her, she was 5 and barely spoke. I couldn't let that happen again. Evelyn couldn't look away from a child. Rose leaned against Lena's shoulder, small fingers gripping her sleeve tightly. "She must mean the world to you." "She's my world." Silence fell between them for a moment, broken only by the hum of conversation and clatter of dishes from the kitchen. "You remember when we used to sneak out after curfew?" Evelyn said softly. Lena laughed. "And hide behind Mr. Carter's junkyard. You were terrified of dogs. You threw a rock at his fence just to see me run." Both women laughed, briefly lost in the past. Then Evelyn's expression changed. "Why didn't you ever reach out?" she asked. Lena's smile faltered. You got adopted. I didn't. You became someone. And I didn't want to be a shadow in your story. Evelyn's throat tightened. I looked for you. Lena blinked. You did. For years. I didn't think I mattered enough, Lena whispered. You were the only reason I survived that place, Evelyn said, her voice suddenly thick with emotion. You mattered more than you ever knew. They both stared at each other. Then Rose, still leaning against Lena, tugged her sleeve. Mom, can we get more syrup? Lena nodded, rising. Sure, baby. She moved toward the counter. Evelyn sat with Rose in silence. She stared at the little girl, at her frail fingers and soft, cloudy eyes. Rose, do you know how special your mom is? Evelyn asked. The girl tilted her head. She says she's not special. She says love makes people brave, not the other way around. Evelyn smiled sadly. She's right. When Lena returned, Evelyn stood up. I want to help. Lena froze. Help. You don't belong here. Scrubbing tables for pennies. I can give you a better life. A real one. Lena looked away. I don't want charity. It's not charity. It's repaying a debt. Lena's jaw clenched. Evelyn, I'm not looking for handouts. I chose this life because Rose needs stability, not change, not attention, not luxury. Evelyn reached into her purse and handed her a card. If you change your mind, call me. I mean it. Lena took it reluctantly. Evelyn bent down to Rose. Goodbye, Rose. Take care of your mom. Okay. I always do, Rose said, beaming. Evelyn left the diner without looking back. But something had cracked inside her. For weeks after, she couldn't stop thinking about them. She sat through board meetings, but heard Lena's voice. She watched city skylines from her penthouse, but saw Rose's pale eyes. Then, a month later, her assistant buzzed her. There's someone here to see you. She says her name is Lena. Evelyn's heart stopped. When Lena walked into her office, she was holding Rose's hand. I'm not here for money, she said firmly. But I need your help. Evelyn stood. Anything. She needs surgery. Her corneas might be saved. There's a 30% chance. But I can't afford the hospital. And she's starting to ask questions. About her birth mother. About why she was left. Evelyn nodded. I'll take care of everything. But Lena, why now? Lena hesitated. Because she deserves more than I can give. Evelyn moved to her, gently took her hand. Let me be part of her story, too. 2 weeks later, Rose lay in the hospital bed, tiny and fragile. Machines beeped softly. Evelyn stood on one side. Lena on the other. The doctor adjusted the mask and nodded. We're ready. Evelyn held her breath as Rose was wheeled into surgery. 5 hours passed. Then 7. When the doctor finally returned, his expression was unreadable. Lena clutched Evelyn's arm. Please. The doctor smiled slowly. It went better than we expected. We'll know more in a few days. But there's hope. Lena collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Evelyn sat beside her, wrapping her arms around the woman who once saved her from everything. 3 days later, Rose blinked for the first time in the light. Her eyes were red, swollen, and filled with tears. I see light, she whispered. Lena gasped. Oh my God. I see something gold. Is that your hair, Mommy? Lena broke down crying. Evelyn turned away, tears spilling down her cheeks. From that day, Evelyn visited them daily. She brought books, toys, even hired a tutor. She helped Lena find a better apartment, offered her a role in her company's charitable foundation, helping children like Rose. But something strange began happening. Evelyn started feeling like she belonged. One night, months later, she tucked Rose into bed in the new apartment Lena and she now shared. Rose reached out. And Evelyn? Yes, sweet girl. Did you know I dreamt of you before I ever met you? Evelyn smiled. You did. I saw a woman with gold earrings and sad eyes. She didn't smile much, but I knew she'd help us. She just didn't know it yet. Evelyn froze. Her earrings were gold. Her smile rare. How did you know? Rose shrugged. Sometimes you just feel people before you meet them. That night, Evelyn stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. And as the moonlight poured across the floor, she whispered into the dark, Maybe this was the life I was meant to live all along. But just when everything seemed perfect, a letter arrived. A thick envelope with no return address. Lena opened it in the kitchen, and her hands began to tremble. Evelyn saw her go pale. "What is it?" Lena handed it to her slowly. Inside was a legal document, custody papers, filed by a woman claiming to be Rose's birth mother. Evelyn stared at the name. Her hands clenched. Veronica Langston. And Evelyn knew that name, because she had once put that woman behind bars. Samantha leaned back into the soft leather of her Mercedes, staring through the windshield at the small diner across the street. Her manicured fingers tightened around the steering wheel, not from anger or fear, but confusion. She'd returned the next morning, canceling a board meeting she herself had called just to sit in the shadows and watch. Something about that waitress, Claire, stuck with her. The image of the young woman gently feeding the blind child with care and joy haunted her. It wasn't pity, it wasn't obligation. It was love, pure and selfless. And that didn't make sense to Samantha. People didn't just do things without expecting something in return. That's not how the world worked, at least not in Samantha's world. The billionaires, the investors, the executives, they moved based on profit, not compassion. So why would someone like Claire, someone who barely had enough to survive, give so much to someone who wasn't even her own? Samantha stepped out of the car, the click of her heels echoing through the near-empty street. Inside the diner, Claire moved with energy, wiping down tables, filling coffee cups, and stopping now and then to crouch beside the girl, Emily. Samantha had learned her name was to whisper something that always made her smile. The girl was blind, but she had the kind of smile that made you believe she could see more than anyone else. As Samantha entered, Claire looked up. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and there it was again, that raw, unfiltered kindness. Samantha turned away quickly, pretending to scan the menu posted above the counter. Claire came over, a notepad in her hand. "Good morning," she said, her voice warm but tired. "What can I get you today?" Samantha looked at her closely, noting the faint dark circles under her eyes and the calluses on her hands. She wore cheap sneakers and a worn-out apron, but her smile never faded. "Just coffee," Samantha said after a pause. Claire nodded, wrote it down, and turned to leave, but something made Samantha speak again. "The little girl. Is she your daughter?" Claire froze for a second before turning back. "No," she said softly, "but she might as well be." Samantha leaned forward. "That doesn't answer my question." Claire looked away, then back. "Her mother was my best friend. Died 2 years ago in a car accident. Emily had no one else. Her father had walked out when she was born blind. The system wanted to put her in a foster home. I couldn't let that happen. So I took her in. I wasn't ready. God, I could barely afford my own rent. But I knew. I just knew I had to." Samantha blinked, absorbing the weight of those words. She didn't know why, but something in her shifted. She thanked Claire, paid for the coffee, and left without another word. But she returned the next day, and the next. Each time, she watched more than she spoke. Emily began to recognize her voice and, one day, asked if she wanted to sit with them. Samantha hesitated, then agreed. The girl spoke with such joy, asking questions about the world she couldn't see, describing what she imagined trees and rivers looked like, and telling Samantha that some things don't need eyes to be seen. Those words hit Samantha like a punch to the gut. For days afterward, Samantha found herself distracted. Her mansion felt colder. Her walls, which once gave her pride, now seemed empty. Her closet of designer clothes suddenly felt meaningless. The warmth she saw in Claire and Emily made her life feel mechanical, lifeless. She told herself to move on, to forget. But she couldn't. Not after what she'd seen. Then, one stormy evening, she received a call from her assistant. The voice was frantic. "Ma'am, there's someone here trying to reach you. A waitress named Claire. She's crying and says she needs help. It's about the girl." Samantha didn't wait. She was in her car within minutes, the rain hammering against the windshield as she sped toward the address Claire had given. It was a dilapidated apartment on the city's edge. The door was open. Claire was sitting on the floor, holding Emily in her arms, her face streaked with tears. She collapsed, Claire whispered, rocking the child gently. She hasn't been eating. I thought it was just the flu. But then she stopped talking. I don't know what's wrong with her. Samantha knelt beside them, feeling Emily's forehead. It was burning. We need to get her to the hospital. Now, hours later, under the white lights of the emergency room, Samantha stood beside Claire as doctors worked on the girl. Tests were run. Machines beeped. And then the doctor appeared, his face grim. She's severely malnourished. Her body's been compensating for months, but it's beginning to shut down. Her blindness is due to a rare genetic condition, but her current state, it's a result of long-term nutritional deficiency. If we hadn't caught it tonight. Claire collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Samantha stood frozen. All the wealth she had, all the power, and yet she'd been blind. Blind to what truly mattered. But not anymore. She turned to Claire. From now on, you don't work at that diner. You work for me. Claire looked up in confusion. What? What are you talking about? You're Emily's guardian, right? But who's your guardian? Who's helping you? Samantha took a deep breath. Come live in my guest house. Full medical care, a private tutor for Emily, everything she needs. And you'll be in charge of my new foundation. One that helps kids like Emily. You've been doing this alone for too long. Claire tried to argue, but Samantha stopped her. This isn't charity. You saved that girl's life. Now, let me help you save others. Over the next few months, their lives changed. Emily recovered quickly, her body regaining strength and her smile growing brighter each day. She and Samantha formed a bond that surprised even Samantha. The little girl would sit beside her in the garden and tell her stories of colors she imagined and sounds that painted pictures in her mind. Samantha found herself listening more, speaking less, learning. And Claire bloomed. The tired waitress transformed into a confident woman with purpose. She worked tirelessly on the foundation, meeting with doctors, teachers, and caregivers, designing programs to help children with special needs and mothers who had no one. But not everything was perfect. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Samantha received a letter. No return address. Just a single page with bold, black ink. You can't hide from the past, Samantha. Blood money can't buy innocence. She froze. That name, that phrase. It pulled her back to a part of her life she had buried deep. Years ago, in her early days as an investor, she had funded a pharmaceutical project that had later been exposed for unethical testing. She had pulled out immediately, but the damage had been done. People had suffered. She had spent years donating quietly to cover the guilt. But no one had ever confronted her about it. Until now. She didn't mention the letter to Claire. But it haunted her. Days later, another arrived. This time, it included a photo of Emily, taken from a distance. Samantha immediately doubled security. Claire was frightened, but Samantha reassured her. I'll protect you both, no matter what. But in the back of her mind, the fear grew. Someone was watching. Someone who knew her past. And they were getting close. Then one night, Emily vanished. She had gone out to the garden. A few minutes, Claire had said, just to smell the flowers. When they realized she hadn't come back, panic erupted. The estate was searched. Security footage was reviewed. One frame showed a figure, tall, hooded, leading Emily toward the woods behind the house. Police were called. Search teams were dispatched. But hours passed, and no sign of her emerged. Claire broke down. It's my fault. I should have gone with her. She's blind. What was I thinking? But Samantha's jaw was set. She stared into the darkness beyond the estate walls. This isn't your fault. This is mine. Then her phone rang. A voice, distorted and low. You took her in. But you don't deserve her. If you want her back, come alone. Midnight. The place where it all began. The line went dead. Samantha knew exactly what that meant. The original warehouse. The one where the unethical drug trials had taken place all those years ago. It had been abandoned since the scandal broke. She tried to forget it, but now it called her back. She didn't tell Claire. She simply left a note and vanished into the night. Inside the old warehouse, it was cold and damp. The roof leaked. Shadows danced across the rusted walls. Samantha walked in, her heels echoing with every step. "I'm here," she called out. "Where is she?" A light flickered on. In the center of the room stood a man. Older now, but she recognized him instantly. Dr. Reed, the lead scientist from the project. He had vanished after the scandal, presumed dead. "You destroyed me," he spat. "Left me to take the fall. You walked away clean while I lost everything." "I didn't know," Samantha replied. "I pulled out the moment I found out." "But it was too late," he sneered. "My daughter was part of that trial. She died. And now you want to play savior? You think helping one blind girl makes up for it." "She's not just some girl," Samantha said quietly. "She's the only light I've ever known." Dr. Reed stepped aside. Emily sat tied to a chair, her eyes covered but calm. "I'm not afraid," she said, as if sensing Samantha nearby. "Because I know you're here." Samantha stepped forward slowly. "Let her go. This isn't justice. This is revenge." Reed's hand trembled. "She doesn't deserve this. But you do." Samantha took a deep breath and dropped her phone on the ground, pushing it toward him. "Call the press. Call the police. I'll confess. I'll make it right. Just let her go." Reed hesitated. Then, slowly, he cut the ropes. Emily ran into Samantha's arms. The doctor turned away, his shoulders shaking. "I lost everything. Don't let her end up like my daughter." As dawn broke, Samantha walked out of the warehouse, holding Emily close. The world had changed. Again. And this time, Samantha wasn't going to run. They stood at the edge of the old warehouse as the sun lifted over the city like a revelation. The light washed over Samantha and Emily, casting long shadows behind them, echoes of what had been. Emily clung to Samantha's coat, her tiny hands squeezing with a trust that shook Samantha to the core. It wasn't just relief in the girl's grip. It was faith. Samantha had never been the subject of anyone's faith before, and certainly never one so pure and innocent. She had been a titan of industry, a woman defined by results, performance, and control. But standing there, with the child she had come to love like her own, Samantha realized she'd been powerless all along, powerless to feel, to forgive, to atone, until now. The authorities arrived soon after, alerted by Claire, who had discovered Samantha's note and contacted the police. When they found Samantha and Emily sitting together outside the warehouse, she rose slowly, her face pale but resolute. The officer in charge approached her with concern. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She nodded, but her voice was hoarse when she answered. "Take me in. I have something to confess." Back at the station, Samantha gave a full statement. She spared herself no excuses. She detailed her early investment in the pharmaceutical firm, the oversight, the lawsuits, the deaths, and her failure to speak publicly even after she withdrew. Her lawyers, summoned in a panic, urged her to retract, to adjust her language, to protect her brand. But Samantha refused. "Let the world know," she told them. "If I lose everything, so be it." The story exploded. Major news outlets ran back-to-back segments. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire confesses past role in medical scandal." Samantha Knox, from power broker to whistleblower. But what stunned the public more wasn't her confession. It was her choice to tell it voluntarily, unprovoked, without gain. And when people learned the reason behind her transformation, about the blind girl she rescued, the waitress she took in, and the foundation she built from scratch, the tide shifted. Protests turned into discussions. Critics began calling her the billionaire who fell on her own sword. Former employees, once silenced, came forward with stories of her early ambition and later regret. Samantha didn't hide. She gave interviews not to explain but to expose. She named names, spoke of systemic failure, and pleaded for reform in pharmaceutical ethics. She made herself a case study of failure, of guilt, and, finally, of redemption. Through all of it, Claire stood by her. They had gone from strangers to allies, bound not by charity, but by shared love for a little girl who had taught them both what it meant to live with open hearts. Claire managed the day-to-day operations of the Emily Light Foundation, which now spanned multiple states, offering resources to underprivileged children with disabilities. She turned out to be a born leader. Samantha, who once couldn't see beyond the walls of her corporate fortress, now deferred to Claire's judgment with ease. There was no ego left in her, only purpose. Emily continued to thrive. Her blindness never faded, but her world expanded. With the help of specialized tutors, audio technology, and mobility training, she grew more confident by the day. She would walk through gardens and describe the smell of jasmine as though it were a color. "It smells like blue and white dancing," she once said, making Samantha cry without knowing why. Emily's mind painted pictures more vivid than any sighted person could imagine. One evening, a year after the warehouse incident, Samantha stood on the terrace of her now modest home. She had sold the mansion, saying it was too empty for a full heart, and moved into a smaller villa where she, Claire, and Emily lived together like an unusual but loving family. That night, the sky was alive with stars, and the sound of Claire humming to herself in the kitchen drifted through the open doors. Samantha sat beside Emily, who rested her head on her shoulder. "Can I ask you something?" the girl whispered. "Anything." "Are you still sad?" Samantha smiled faintly. "Sometimes. But not like before. Before, I didn't know what was missing. Now even if I hurt sometimes, I feel whole." Emily nodded, her unseeing eyes fixed toward the horizon. "You're better now." "Yes," Samantha said, voice catching in her throat. "Because of you." That same week, Samantha received a visitor. It was Dr. Reed. She had insisted he be released under a lenient plea, citing emotional trauma and personal loss. The court had obliged, thanks in part to public opinion and her testimony. He came not as a threat this time, but as a ghost who needed release. "I saw your last interview," he said as they sat in the garden. "You didn't protect yourself. You told the whole story. I owed it to your daughter. And to Emily." Dr. Reed nodded. "I still wake up at night hearing my little girl cry. But seeing what you've done, I think she'd have wanted me to forgive." Silence passed between them like a slow breeze. Then he looked at her, eyes heavy with history. "There's something strange about guilt. It doesn't shrink when you ignore it. But when you carry it, when you face it, sometimes it turns into something useful." They parted with no need for more words. Forgiveness had been given, and both walked away lighter. The following spring, the foundation hosted its first international conference. Samantha was the keynote speaker. The room was packed with advocates, medical professionals, parents, and survivors. She stepped up to the podium, her silver hair gleaming, her voice firm but humble. "I once believed success meant domination," she began. "Then I believed redemption meant erasing the past. But I was wrong on both counts. True success is not dominance. It's service. And redemption is not erasure. It's acknowledgement. It's action." She paused and gestured to the side of the stage, where Claire stood holding Emily's hand. "These two souls saved me. I had everything, yet I was starving inside. They fed me not with pity, but with presence, with love. This is not just a foundation. It's a promise that no child will be forgotten and no mistake will be hidden." The crowd rose in applause. Claire wiped tears from her eyes. Emily stood proudly, her dress white like hope, a cane in one hand and Claire's fingers in the other. The years that followed were not without challenge. There were days when Samantha's body ached from age, when Claire felt the weight of too many responsibilities, and when Emily struggled with the frustrations of her condition. But they faced it all together. They celebrated birthdays with homemade cake and sang off-key around the kitchen table. They laughed during power outages, holding flashlights like torches. They cried when Emily had her first surgery, an attempt at experimental treatment that ultimately failed. But even in failure, they never lost the light. On Samantha's 75th birthday, Emily, now a poised teenager with a deep love for poetry and music, played a composition she wrote herself. It was a piece called Sight Without Eyes. As the melody floated through the garden, Samantha sat quietly in her chair, a blanket on her lap and tears streaming freely. Claire held her hand. That night, as they tucked Emily into bed, Samantha whispered something she had never said before. "You are the greatest thing that's ever happened to me." Years later, when Samantha passed away peacefully in her sleep, it made international news. Not because she was a billionaire, not because of the scandal, but because of what she became afterward. Her obituary didn't start with her net worth. It began with a simple line. She found her soul in the heart of a blind child. Her funeral was held at the Foundation's main headquarters. Hundreds came. Some were children who had been helped through her programs. Some were mothers like Claire, who had once stood alone and found refuge. Claire spoke only briefly, holding back tears. She changed because she let herself love. That's all. She opened the door to someone else's pain, and it became her strength. Emily, now 18, stood in front of the crowd last. She held no paper, no notes, just a small white lily in her hand. "I never saw her face," she said, "but I knew her soul. It was tired when we met, but over time it became light, like music, like wind." She once told me I gave her hope, but really she gave it to me. She showed me that even the coldest heart can learn to be warm, and even the blind can be seen. She placed the lily on the casket and smiled. And so the story ended, not in sorrow, but in transformation. A story that began with separation, guilt, and blindness became one of healing, vision, and love. The legacy of Samantha, Claire, and Emily lived on not in monuments or bank accounts, but in people, in changed lives, in choices made when no one was watching. The world remembered Samantha Knox not as a woman who once had everything, but as a woman who gave everything when it finally mattered most. The end.